Yo, what's up?
Yo, what's up? This is gonna be my first actual video. It's just gonna be like a voiceover. But so that's kind of like what I'm doing. But today I'm gonna be talking about, and if you saw my stream earlier today, meaning December 3rd, Thursday, you'll know that I tried to talk about the Russian Revolution. Well, I completely forgot everything. So that's what this rant's gonna be about. It's gonna be Russian Revolution. It's gonna be funny. Hopefully I can bring this some interesting stuff. I might throw in some stuff with like Japan even. I don't know. Maybe I might get into World War II. We'll see where this goes. So, I mean, first off, I tried to talk about it was horrid today because I didn't know where anything was. I couldn't remember half of this stuff. But I've made to refresh on my material, that's for sure. But so yeah, that's kind of what we're doing today. Now, okay, so first off, regarding what happened in the stream, I tried to talk about the 1905 versus the 1917 revolution. I did so bad at that. There's so much more to it. There's a bunch of other stuff regarding what happened in 1905 and 1917. I think I got 1905 decently well, with the main part being the Russo-Japanese War. But, I mean, there's a bunch of other stuff going on, right? I mean, part of it was the Tsar. The Tsar sucked. Nicholas II, look him up. He's, how do I put this? He is a small, frail tree when it comes to hurricanes. I mean, he was such a pushover, had no backbone, and he just didn't know how to run a country. I mean, so that was the main like starting reason was Nicholas II had no idea what he was doing. And actually, in 1905, the Russo-Japanese War was in 1904. But 1905 was when there was strikes. And back in, and I think the best thing that I actually found on this was in 1894 to 1895. There was only 33 strikes a year, but in 1905 there were 106. So I mean, just crazy numbers, and it jumped. So I think it shows how unbelievably bad that the Russians lost and how bad Nicholas was doing. I mean, it was horrid. But also, the war against Japan was supposed to be the easiest thing ever. I mean, it was supposed to be a minor dispute where nothing it kind of just blew over. Russia won. Like that was where Russia was supposed to win. The Japanese obliterated Russia horribly. I mean, Russia was one of the biggest countries in the world at this point, and still is today. But even military-wise too, they were massive, and this little country of Japan just absolutely spits in their face, makes a mess of it. Also, there's a lot of kind of racial going on stuff there between, maybe not racial. Well, I mean, there was some racial stuff between different races within the Russian area, but also minorities such as families that used to be feudal lords and families who used to be servers in serfs, or when there was still serfdom. The serfdom was still around in Russia. So I mean, it was definitely not a good time in 1905. This was actually when the first socialist group, or official socialist group with any power in Russia, actually got formed. And this was because both the Bolsheviks and the Bolsheviks were gaining power in Petrograd, if I'm remembering that right. And so it was of a group that was socialist became decently powerful. Now, it wasn't massive, but they started to gain power. But also, more and more strikes were happening. And again, I said in the stream today that they kind of followed in what the British did before the American Revolution. They shot unarmed protesters in January of 1905, and I actually got that. I'm proud of myself for getting that. And that actually caused even more breakout of riots and revolution, and especially for the socialist group that had just been formed. A lot of people were suspecting that it was going to be a massive outbreak from them. And so around that time also, the Dumas, which I also got, was kind of a Russian version of Congress, or a parliament, but it wasn't. I'm sorry, but it was horrid. It was obviously controlled by the Tsar. It was a scapegoat. It was not. It was meant to keep the Tsar in check, but it didn't do well. And actually, the revolution of 1905 didn't stop until they actually killed the leaders of the Socialist Party. Which, I mean, if that's how you stop a revolution, probably not going to mean good things for you later on. So that was 1905. Everything kind of calmed down after that, or calmed down because they were scared of being killed, until World War II, or World War I, not World War II. World War II was Stalin. World War I, Russia did horribly. If you know anything about World War I, you know Russia did not do good. They were supposed to be great. They had the most casualties, and a lot of people went into famine. It was not looking good for Russia, and it didn't end up being good. And part of the reason why World War I even happened was because when the Serbian group, the Black Hand, assassinated Austria-Hungary's Archduke, Serbia is now friends with Russia. And Russia and Serbia then get in a war, and that dragged in Germany and Austria. And then Russia was friends with Great Britain and France. It kind of just dragged all of Europe in, or all the major players in Europe in. And at around this time, most people don't think of it, but Russia was actually viewed as underdeveloped and super backwards. Especially because they were so late to certain things like abolishing serfdom and stuff like that. And this actually brought a lot of hope to the Russian country, because it was like, oh, we're finally going to be in the realm of a higher society. We're in more with the big guys. That didn't turn out well. World War I, Russia had the greatest casualties. And it wasn't the biggest problem either, especially for the Tsar. The Tsar got all the blame, and there's some backstory with. We'll get into Rasputin later, but Rasputin and the Queen did some stuff because while Nicholas was away, or the Tsar was away, his wife kind of took over, but because of the influence that Rasputin had over her, Rasputin was practically running the country for a while. But also, major food shortages came of this because all the resources were going to the war, right? So, I mean, it doesn't look good. They lost a ton of soldiers. They had to pull out of World War I. Everybody hated the Tsar. There was stuff going on that was really shady in the government. There's major food shortages. Massive peasants and minorities, or massive groups of peasants and minorities were already kind of on edge because they weren't making money. It just didn't look good. And it didn't turn out good because it ended up leading to the Socialist Party being reunited. And if I'm quoting this right, the party name was the Petrograd Soviet of Workers and Soldiers, Deputies, or the Soviets for short. So they were called Soviets, but the official name was Petrograd Soviet of Workers and Soldiers Deputies. I understand why they went to Soviets. And the government knew that this was coming. The government knew that a revolution was coming. They knew that it wasn't going to be good because everybody hated them. And it got to the point where food shortages led to riots. So, I mean, it was just, everything was bad. And this actually made the army actually joined the riots against the Tsar, and the Tsar actually had to leave the throne, and he said, "Nope, I'm out." Which, I mean, if you have to do that, it's probably not a good thing. Let's be honest. If you have to leave the throne of your country because everybody hates you, not a good idea. And this led to the Dumas, I mentioned those guys earlier, to kind of taking over, but they sucked at it. It was horrid. It was not good. They tried to set up a different government 6 or 7 times. I mean, they went through government. It wasn't going good. And all the while, Soviets were gaining power in Moscow and Petrograd. So 2 major cities in Russia, Soviets are making massive gains. Now, this is when, this is honestly, if you see a diamond just sitting there, let's say you walk outside and you see a diamond just sitting there. Perfect circumstances, right? Nobody's outside, nobody will see you. It's just laying there, it's not booby-trapped, you pick it up, and now you've got $1 million sitting in your hands. Perfect circumstances, right? That's what it was for the Soviets to take power in this situation. And so the Soviet Party actually issued what they call the Order Number 1, and this order directed the army to follow Soviet command rather than the government's command. So I mean, they pretty much overthrew the government by taking the army with them. So they made the army switch sides, which is very hard to do. I mean, so recap. Everybody hated this government, and the Tsar specifically. The Tsar leaves after losing a ton of soldiers and causing major food shortages. Then the Soviets see a perfect opportunity and gain the army of the country, the most powerful thing in the country. Can you see where this is leading? And obviously we all know the USSR was formed, but I mean, it was so perfectly done that they just were able to just pick the diamond up and just walk out. Seriously, it's ridiculous how easy it was for them. So it looked perfect, it was perfect. The only thing that was stopping them was a counter-revolution potential. So they actually had to go through and, if I say so myself, bang the capitalists and the traders. They had to take them out, right? So they had to take they were able to do some of that, but they couldn't get all of them. So they had to continue to gain power, and they became more and more government-like. And this is when it switched from being just Soviets to switching to be largely dominated by socialists. That's when it really turned, especially because it allowed for a lot of people to be like, oh, we've been living in these horrible circumstances while the government's been living in great circumstances. Why can't we all have the same? And they really laid that on to some people. And that's part of the reason why the Soviet Party became socialist so quickly. And it was a massive turning point, to say the least. And this is kind of when it just turns into... It's a major switch. It kind of just turns into Russia is now socialist and under rule by Soviets. But it doesn't really change until October, when Lenin actually breaks into the government buildings. And if you know, I haven't really talked about him much, but I mean, the Russians hated him. The Russian government hated him. They exiled him. It was not good. They hated him because of the fact that he inspired so much fear and hate. So Lenin now takes over the Soviets and breaks into government buildings and takes over Russia. The one guy that was left to save them, Alexander Kerensky, just left. Just left. Because he was scared that it actually was gonna kill him. They would have killed him. So, I mean, it's definitely an interesting topic. Because, and where we are in the story at this point, the Soviets win. The socialists win. And it led to the USSR. And obviously it turns into Stalin and stuff like that. But I mean, it was such a perfect opportunity for them. And honestly, in my opinion, it's probably one of the best revolution stories, maybe other than the American Revolution. And now I'm biased. But the American Revolution has just a different, taste of the small group overthrowing the massive group. Well, this was the small group turned into the massive group and destroyed everything in their way. Which is also a very good way to do it, but it's so incredibly insane how potentially easy it was to get to the point where it was, simply because bad leadership was there. So, when people say everybody should learn history, or because history repeats itself if nobody knows what not to do, it's true. Because people who wouldn't know about this potentially could be bad government leaders and lead to a second version of this. Not communist versus capitalist, but just revolution in general. And if they actually want to keep power, they gotta make it hard for the opposing team, right? So that's it. That's it for today. I know this was kind of a weird video, especially for Minecraft YouTuber, but I enjoy it. I think it's fun. Let me know what you guys think in the video, the comments. If you want me to do more of this, if you want me to do rants on certain topics, leave them in the description. I'll research them and talk about them in other videos. I've got a lot of video to use as background. So if you guys want me to rant about anything or talk about anything, leave it down in the comments. Or if you've just got questions, leave them down in the comments. So, yeah. Thank you for watching if you watched this far. And have a good rest of your day. Bye.